Hello. So for this writing advice video, I want to talk about endings. Now, I have not done a video on beginnings, and the reason why I haven't really done one on beginnings is because beginnings are very simple. You need to have a really good first chapter. Something I feel that really draws your readers into your conflict or basically your story that drives the plot forward from there. I don't feel beginnings can be epic with one awesome line. I feel like everything that's been done for an awesome opening first line has already been done. So it more or less relies on the entire chapter to get the story going. So that's why I'm talking about endings today. So let's begin. Number 1. So for the first thing, if you are writing a series, or this does not really apply to a series, this is for standalone stories only. If you're writing a standalone story, most of the time you want to conclude the story. Bring the story to a fine point. Actually answer all the questions. Tie up all your loose ends. If you are planning on having another book that references things or answers things, that's fine. If it's not part of a series in general, if you might just expand on a character that maybe had a small role in the book, it's fine if you don't answer every single question then. But if the book is standalone, all by itself, and you're never going to touch this material again, that is my first tip for writing a good ending. Make sure you finish the book, that you don't leave the door open, or people are always going to wonder if there's more to the story. Now, number 2. This one mainly directly applies to series books. If you are writing a series book, it is my personal belief that by the end of the series, you want to conclude every plot point. Every question needs to be answered. Everything has to be laid out for the reader. Now, in my personal series that I've done, I actually put this as part of the planning. And that's the big thing. When you're writing the ending, and you have a series, you need to plan it all out way in advance. For the most part, I did do this with The Guardian of Light. Books 1, 2, and 3 set up many questions. If you read through the first 3 books, you will notice that I keep laying out question after question after question. But through that time, I also do answer subtle questions. The non-important things that can be answered right away. When am I going to start answering these questions? Well, I planned the series out. Originally, it was going to be 7 books. But then I figured I didn't have quite enough content for this main storyline to fit into 7 books completely. So I knocked it down to 6. Which actually turned out to be more perfect, because then during my planning phase, I was able to decide, well, books 1, 2, and 3 are going to set up all the questions. Books 4, 5, and 6 are going to answer some of those burning questions people will have. One of the things I did is I set up something in book 1, which I'm not going to pay off until book 5, because I want the readers to always have that in the back of their mind, not knowing if it was a mistake or not. So, that's my advice. If you're writing a series, set it up with your first half. Then conclude it with your second half. And when you conclude it, make sure you actually conclude it. Don't leave the door open. That is probably the biggest piece of advice I can give with any ending. Do not leave it open. I'm a huge fan of TV shows. And one of my favorites is 24. Well, 24, spoilers, each season actually ended with Jack Bauer still alive. Even now, in the canon timeline of the show and the miniseries, Jack Bauer is still alive. There was one season which ended with him being kidnapped by the Chinese. Then, I believe at the end of the miniseries, he was kidnapped by the Russians. So, could Jack Bauer come back? Yes. I believe that the show will never actually be over until either Kiefer Sutherland passes away or until they bring back Jack Bauer and kill him off finally. Honestly, I thought that's what was going to happen when they tried to reboot the series. But they didn't bring Jack Bauer in at all. I thought they would have concluded that first season with them finding Jack Bauer, and maybe season 2 would have picked up with Jack Bauer helping out, but then being killed off shortly halfway through the season. And the entire season would have been him passing the torch on to the new guy. But they didn't do that, and the legacy only lasted one season. So, you can't leave any room open for the story to continue if you want this story to end with these characters. Now, my series, again, The Guardian of Light, my characters will survive. But because they survive, I do plan on having a spin-off trilogy that will take place several years after the events of the main series, which will still include the main characters from this series. So it's not necessarily directly part of the series. It's going to be kind of a new series dealing with something else. But that's why I'm going to leave the door open for those characters. That's why they're still going to be alive. Now, do you have to kill the characters off to bring the story to a final end? No. You could have your character retire. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll come back. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're done. You could guest spot them in future books that still take place in that world. Similar to like Harry Potter. Harry Potter survived his books. So if J.K. Rowling ever continued on in the wizarding world, let's say 20 years down the road, then we could get a much older Harry, a much older Hermione, and a much older Ron. And we could actually see what they've been up to in their time since the Deathly Hallows. Will they be main characters? Probably not. But they'll still be around. They'll still be there. So we could still see, future stuff. But I'm one of those people also, I don't count the Cursed Child as part of this canon timeline. I know J.K. Rowling has come out and said it is, but yeah, no. That was just not a good story. It did not hold true to the spirit of the Harry Potter franchise. Actually, I'm much more on board with the Fantastic Beasts franchise as a prequel series. And honestly, I wouldn't mind a standalone movie that shows some of, Snape and the Marauders. That, I think, would be an awesome series. It could also show Voldemort's rise to power. So, anyways, moving on. Number 3. This tip is, again, for series writers. If you are writing a series, how should you end your books if it's not the last book? And my biggest piece of advice is this: always leaving wanting more. I know that's a cliche to say, but it's so true. If people can put the first book in your series down and say, okay, that was enough for me, then you did not do a good enough job. Every single book that comes out in the Guardian of Light, and I have asked many of my readers what they thought of the ending, and normally they all say the same thing. I can't wait to read the next one. I want to finish the story. When are you coming out with the next book? Partly, that is the reason I push myself so hard to write these books, because I want to give that to my readers. I want my readers to know the story that I have stuck in my head. But at the same time, I also want to give plenty of other people a chance to read these stories, and it just honestly does take some time to write. But what I mean by always leaving wanting more is throw in a little scene or something else that sets up the next book in line. You don't have to do this. I mean, honestly, Harry Potter again, the books did not always set up the next one in line. But you basically knew there was going to be more because the main storyline had not been concluded yet, which was Voldemort had not been defeated. So, leave them wanting more. Give them something to ponder, Did this character really die? I mean, we saw him moving at the end. Or, it don't make the things, I guess, too obvious. One of the biggest disappointments was Batman v Superman. At the very end, we start to see the dirt rising up off Superman's grave, and it's like, yeah, okay, we already know Superman's going to be coming back. So that's not really a surprise, and it's not really going to definitely get people in the seats to watch the next movie. But there is a reason why TV shows and books and movies have cliffhangers, and it's for that reason. Because if you make it seem like the story actually comes to an end, then people may not look forward to the next one. They might be like, okay, now you're milking it. You're just trying to put something out there. This was never part of your plan. So that has been my writing advice for endings. If you're doing a standalone, make sure you tie everything up at the end. If you're doing a series, when you get to the last book, the one you know is the final book of that series, make sure you tie up every loose end. And as a series, you might have a lot of loose ends. So make sure your explanation for everything is clear to the reader, satisfies the reader, and gives them the answers that they want answered. Anything you leave out, trust me, people will harp on that. They will go after you for it. So, make sure the last book answers every final question. And if you are writing a series, and it's not the last book, definitely do a cliffhanger. You don't have to put a piece of the next book into this book, you can just put a cliffhanger like somebody finding a document or somebody being sent out on an assignment or something along those lines. A character finding a map. Something that opens the door and says, yes, there will be more. So come back to see where this goes. This is all connected. It's all part of this story. You do not want to miss what comes next. I recently made several changes to my channel. If this is your first time, please hit the subscribe button. It helps me out a great deal. Also, if there is a topic you would like me to cover in a future video, leave that in the comments down below. Also, one more thing, with it being November and December, and me being such a huge fan of Christmas, if you couldn't tell by my book series, for those of you that have read it, I'm a big fan of Christmas. I'm a huge fan of Christmas. So, as a special treat, during the month of November and December, I am giving away randomly digital codes. So, here is a digital code for this video. If this code does not work for you and you missed out on this, do not worry, I have more. But a better way to make sure you have a better chance at getting a code is to subscribe to this channel. Every time I get 10 subscribers, my next video will definitely have a code in it. So, subscribe today. If you are a big fan of Christmas, if you are a huge fan of fantasy, I implore you to also visit my Amazon link in the comments in the description below and check out my series, The Guardian of Light. It is an epic fantasy that will redefine how you look at Christmas. I want to thank everyone for watching, and happy writing.